I'm gonna get going. I'm making a video about Star Wars. I love Star Wars, and I've been loving Star Wars. Star Wars, to me, is just like the epitome of like the posing of an alternate reality where like anyone can just be doing whatever the fuck they want. And I think like to a lot of queer people, sci-fi and video games and films and all that kind of stuff is just such an escape. And I love it for those reasons. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace of Star Wars, was the first Star Wars film that I ever watched. It was the first sci-fi film in this genre that I ever watched. I remember some of my friends from school in Norway were talking about Star Wars, and I didn't really know what it was. They were like, do you want to play Star Wars with us? And then my parents always used to play this song that was like, the car wash, yeah. So I thought they were playing Car Wash. So I was like, yeah, like I'll play Car Wash. And then like, it was just not what I thought it was. And I went home and told my dad about it, and he was like, okay, I'll get you one of the Star Wars films, like let's watch it. At this point, my dad used to work in the UK, but we would visit Norway every weekend. So he brought back the first film, and over 6 weeks, he brought every single film the next weekend. So I remember him bringing it, I remember us sitting down to watch it. And I just remember Darth Maul coming out the first time with the double lightsaber, and me just being like, who is this diva? Like, this guy is absolutely everything. When I was a kid, I would dress up as Darth Maul all the time. I dressed up as loads of different characters from loads of different shows and characters I'd made up, but Darth Maul was like my #1 girl. I'd get my mum to do face paint as him, and I'd run around with my little double-ended lightsaber, which I'd made from painting a stick red, and I'd just be a general little menace. And I loved it. In fact, my mum first got an iPhone. It was during the time of World Book Day in year 5, and I got her to paint me as Darth Maul. But she put a picture of me with the Darth Maul face paint on as the background of her phone, and she still has it there to this day. I'll put a picture of it here. So in honor of Intergalactic Star Wars Day, May the 4th be with you, I've decided to update it to something I'd actually wear now. I basically wanted to turn it into a look, but at the same time have elements that I could wear on a more day-to-day basis. What I was really going for here is I wanted to make something that's like, if you got the reference and you knew, you could see how nerdy it was and what I was going for here, but if you didn't, you'd still just really like it as an outfit. And I always wanted to be very undercover with it, but like when people are like, oh, I like your jumper, I'm always like, it's based on my favorite Sith Lord. I try and be cool and mysterious, and it doesn't work out for me. But anyways, before we get going, please like, comment, subscribe, share, interact with this video. I love making videos like this, and I really would love to continue. Also, I've been talking about some really fun announcements that I've been having, and I'm gonna be on I Kiss the Boy Season 2. It's like queer Love Island, but much more wholesome and much more progressive, and really celebrates queer storylines, but also just has great drama. So subscribe on here if you want to hear more tea about that. I'm gonna be making videos about that, and I'm also gonna be making more making videos, yapping videos, lots of fun things to come. So join me on this journey. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about the design process of this look. There's lots of different directions I could have taken this look. I could have done a more body paint direction, kind of prosthetics, making very bionic pieces, draggy, club kiddie. There was lots of different ways I could take it. But I wanted to make a kind of streetwear club kid version. Like an intersection of those things so I could actually wear it and it wasn't just a really over the top one-off look. So I basically made a decision that I was going to turn a regular tracksuit into a much more like queerified, over the top shape, which was much more accentuated, and then add the pattern of his body tattoos on top of that. Now we're on to making the base of the outfit, so the actual tracksuit itself. Essentially my process here was that I got a jumper and some trackies that were really horribly shaped, and I completely reconstructed them to the point where I was basically just using that fabric to make a new pair. So when it came to reshaping the jumper, I detached the sleeves, I took apart the hems on the sides, so it was basically like a front panel of fabric, a back panel of fabric, and then 2 sleeve ones. I then cropped the fabric panels on the front to make it more of a cropped shape, and I used a lot of that fabric to add onto the sleeves. This made the sleeves much bigger and the shoulders much bigger, and made the waist much smaller, which created a much more nice silhouette. Then after making basically completely new pattern pieces, I sewed them all together. Now I moved on to the trackies, and they were honestly even worse. They had this really horrible fit where they were really skinny at the bottom and really wide at the top, and they were too big for my waist anyway. So I basically cut them off at short length. I like quite long shorts that like go just over the knee, but I took that fabric off and then I made fabric panels out of the bottom bits of fabric from the trousers, and then I put them into the sides of the trousers. So I made the waist a little bit smaller, but it made the bottoms much wider, which then just made a much nicer silhouette of the shorts. Now I basically had a jumper and shorts that just created a much nicer silhouette overall, and it also went much more with the Darth Maul vibe. Also I had a bit of leftover fabric from making the shorts, which I used in the mask, but we'll talk about that later. Now we're on to making the pattern onto the pieces themselves. Now Darth Maul is a Dathomirian Zabrak, which is a race in Star Wars which is mainly female-led. His mum is Mother Talzin, who's this like crazy witch enchantress kind of person, but doesn't have a very good relationship with her. It's like an ongoing storyline where he basically has big mummy issues. But when he was born, he was red, and all the black tattoos were added on top of it. That's what happens when a male person in his race kind of like becomes a man and grows into grand stature. After I familiarized myself with the shape of the tattoos, I then drew them all over the jumper. And I placed them in a way that really accentuated the body. I put the chest ones very much in the shape of the chest, ones to like accentuate the shape of the abs, bring in the waist a little bit, to make the back look wide a bit, to go down at the bottom, and also make the shoulders and the arms look bigger. In fact, I'm gonna put the jumper on now, because you're seeing the process of making it. Da-da-da-da! Here's the thing about the stitch pattern on this jumper. Most of it is actually one long continuous line, which I went over 5 times. So I basically just ran through the sewing machine like crazy. Then I moved on to the pattern of the shorts. Here's the thing, this was more hard to do because there's very, very, very few canonized versions of what his leg tattoos look like. Because at the end of episode 1, he loses his legs and he's got robotic legs for the rest of Star Wars. So most of the resources are him with metal legs. At some point I'm gonna make a Darth Maul look that has robotic legs, but we'll get there when we get there. But essentially what I did then was I used the design language established in the body tattoos and I put them onto the legs. So the kind of shapes of the lines and the swirls, but I also used it to accentuate the glutes and the quads, just like I'd done with the chest and the abs and stuff at the top half. Look at me using Jumbo language. Now we're on to the final bit of making the mask. Ooh. Spoilers. This is the final edition, and I think this is basically what takes it in from being like a more daytime look into a kind of club kidified, slightly more of a concept, you know? So basically first I had these like simple paper masks and I reshaped it to fit my face much more. I made the nose a bit smaller and I cut it around so it like made the shape of my hair and my jawline and all that kind of stuff. I then used some of that leftover fabric which I was talking about earlier and I mapped it over the shape of the face. And then I drew the shape of Darth Maul's face tattoos onto the mask itself. This part was so nostalgic because it reminded me of looking in the mirror as my mum was doing the Darth Maul face paint and I could just like see it begin to come alive. Now I'd only attached the fabric with tape so I could take it off really, really easily, and I basically did the same stitching process as I did with all the other pieces. I went over it with a red stitch 5 times. Now the thing about this mask at this point was I obviously couldn't see through it, so I needed to add on some kind of seeing hole. I decided I wanted to add on eyelets. I had 3 different options. I was either going to do red ones, black ones, or yellow ones. Originally I was thinking yellow because when Sith Lords really, really connect with the dark side, their eyes glow yellow. However, it just didn't go with the look overall. I was also thinking black because it might be quite sleek. However, I did go with red because it went very, very well with highlighting them. So it like really showed off the eyelets, but also like went well with the color theme overall. I then glued the fabric down and I used some of those black eyelets on the side, which is what I put the elastic through. Here you can see some of those eyeleted details and also how the eyelets were used to attach the straps on for the mask. And here we have it, the finished look. I imagine that my voice is quite muffled right now, so I don't think I'm going to keep this on while I'm talking about it, but I'll show you some like nice little clips of what it looks like. Honestly, I'm super, super happy with how this one turned out. I think this was like a good step in making a really, really clean, nice outfit. And I'm really, really happy with how it really, really goes on that boundary of like a nice wearable outfit, but also like a cool look in itself. I feel like I've made that point so many times in this video, but that's really what I was going for here. It has super clean and geometric stitch detailing. It's very, very even, but it also like, it looks made, but like well made. And I like wearing things that are clearly made by me. I think there's something really, really nice about wearing things that you've made or have clearly been made by someone. Because 1, it's clear that you're the only person that has it. And 2, that's just what self-expression is. Like you deciding what you're covered in. But the thing about making clothes for yourself as well, you can make it fit the way that you want it to. Personally, I love a crop. I love a big sleeve. I love a big shoulder. And I like shorts that fit this way. I used to really, really hate wearing shorts, but finding this kind of shape, I'm really, really happy with. This look's been in quite a lot of places. I had it in a fashion show recently. I wear it to the club. I wear it like day to day. In fact, I made the jumper before I went on Nike's to Boy, so I even wore it there. So soon it'll be on the BBC as well. But there we have it. The look is done. When I was a kid, I loved Darth Maul because he, to me, was the epitome of like a cool villain, alien sci-fi man. I think he represented to me the kind of possibility to like be different and look different. As I've grown up, I've realized he's got a really, really tragic backstory, and I think that's made me resonate with him a lot harder. He was recognized as someone who was really, really strong with the Force from a really, really early age, and he was taken on by Emperor Palpatine, who was becoming the biggest Sith Lord in the galaxy at that time. And he basically tortured him, removed him from his family, tortured his home civilization to create much more anger within Darth Maul, and anger is what fuels the dark side. So that was always Palpatine's thing. Destroy where his apprentices love to make them more angry and therefore more powerful, but also more dependent on him. He did the same to Darth Vader, he did it to Darth Maul as well. But that's the thing, I think villains are often really, really queer-coded, and that's why I always resonate with them. Not only are they normally the most over-the-top in their expression and look the most different and really, really take agency of how they present themselves to the world, but they often have really, really tragic backstories, which creates them to be who they are. And like with Darth Maul, a lot of them revolve around isolation, being different, and just wanting to be loved and wanting to be accepted and looking for community. But that's what I like about Star Wars. I think on the surface, Star Wars is really, really a story about like good versus evil, but it really always humanizes the villains, which is funny because most of the time the villains aren't human. But I think it represents a complex image of how trauma can lead you to having negative behaviors, and also like how you can overcome them. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me on this nerdy, arty, queer fashion journey. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please, please, please do all the YouTuber interacty things like, comment, subscribe, share. It would really, really mean the world to me. I really, really want to keep on making content like this where I can kind of combine my yapping, my making, and my nerdy love for silly things. And I hope that you want to join on that journey as much as I do. And also, as I mentioned earlier in the video, catch me on I Kissed a Boy coming out the 11th of May, next Sunday, literally today. Honestly, this TV show is going to be incredible, and I'm not even being biased. There's just so many fun storylines, so many fun characters, and every single week you'll be able to catch me here afterwards, yapping about it, making stuff, and just having a good time. Anyways, in a bit, babes. And may the force be with you. I'm not doing that on camera ever again.